Good morning, folks, and welcome to Cultivating Commerce, how the agricultural and food industry strengthen the economy. For this morning session, we'll be previewing the second economic impact report. We're very excited about this. One housekeeping note is that if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section, and we'll get to as many as we can throughout today. To kick us off this morning, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Secretary of Agriculture, Russell Redding. Russell joined the Wolf administration at the very beginning in 2015, and what I can tell you personally is he entered this position with a mission. He wanted to wrap his arms and make sure that we understood what agriculture meant to Pennsylvania and quantify it and make sure that we knew exactly what was going on so that we could build a strategy and make sure that agriculture would remain strong in Pennsylvania now and into the future. What came out of that mission that he was on was several listening sessions and then going into research and analysis to make sure that the data we generated and that we heard turned into real numbers. What that led to was the Secretary working with the Governor, Governor Wolf, to build the Pennsylvania Farm Bill, the one and only farm bill that's state specific in the country. And the goal is to not be just an agency that regulates, but to be active and proactive and put funding in place to make sure that we're putting dollars and effort into places that build agriculture in Western Pennsylvania. We're very excited that now that first economic impact report was a picture in time, as you can say. Now we're going into the second one, which shows us where we've made progress, where we continue to have struggles, and of course with COVID, where we need to really pay attention to make sure that agriculture remains, the strong industry that it is in Pennsylvania, and that we do everything that's necessary. So it gives me great pleasure, and it's an honor to introduce the Secretary of Agriculture, Russell Redding. Secretary Redding.
Hey, Mark, good morning, and thank you for the kind introduction. And as I look at this panel, I'm honored to be with you and look forward to this conversation today. Thank you for joining us on the panel, but also to those who are joining us live. Thank you for your interest in agriculture and this discussion about commerce and the importance to agriculture here in Pennsylvania. Welcome to the 2021 Farm Show. As you can see from the background, that is about as good as I can do for you, right? And it at least gives you a connection. You can see that is what we're celebrating this week. That's why we're here. I mean, the whole series of the week has been around different contemporary issues, and certainly you can't talk about Farm Show or agriculture without talking about commerce. We have a theme this year, as you can see, of cultivating tomorrow. I've said it many times throughout the week, but it's really it's true about sort of what we're doing. We're very intentional about that theme. It was chosen to both express the aspiration we all have about the day when we regain some of those freedoms and some of the traditions to include Farm Show, but it's also an expression of hope and the actions that are required to achieve it. One of those actions is to plan. And Mark set this up nicely. Working with Ryan Unger and the team Pennsylvania and the Ag Advisory Board, we initiated an economic study to help plan for the future of Pennsylvania agriculture and, as our theme points out, to help cultivate that tomorrow. The first Econsult study and economic impacts report revealed many things, not only the impact, but also it helped us to refine our definition of agriculture by answering some basic but critical questions of, well, what is agriculture in Pennsylvania? And who is agriculture? And where is agriculture? This information became the foundation of Governor Wolf's 2019 Pennsylvania Farm Bill, which passed the General Assembly. And I'm honored to have Eddie Day Pashinski, Minority Chair of the House Ag Committee, with us today. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your leadership and look forward to hearing from you. But thank you on behalf of the department to your colleagues in the House as well as the Senate. What we wanted to do, though, was, and to say that at the time we understood sort of what we needed. What we didn't know, of course, what was coming in 2020, and what that would look like. But the information that we learned from the economic impact study helped us assess quickly, what those needs were. It gave us knowledge of who and where and what kind of help was needed for the farm community, the business stakeholders, and certainly to help our elected officials across the state as well. The investments made through the Farm Bill provided extra resiliency to operations. We saw some businesses like, the dairy industry and our meat processing sector, and those who support them pivot quickly with resources to help fulfill markets and keep employees, of course, engaged and working. A good example of this is the Center for Poultry and Livestock Excellence, which was created through the Farm Bill, and they mobilized to provide the personal protective equipment and did a lot of research as well. We've learned a lot through the pandemic, and it's reinforced that agriculture is essential. I think one of the early decisions and most critical was the designation of life-sustaining by the governor. That was both a statement of value, but also a statement of expectation. The importance of agriculture, to be resilient and stable, and that food supply that we've all needed and have watched, over the last 10 months really be tested, is a testament to the Farm Bill as well. We have all the right people, and I say it all the time. This week is about celebrating, but most importantly, the people. We have the farmers and producers who reached out to say, what can I do? How can I help my neighbors? We have the businesses and operations that ask, how can I protect my employees, and what can I do to help the customers? We have organizations like Feeding Pennsylvania and all of that charitable network and their partners who kept food in the food bank and on our tables across Pennsylvania, and still ask, what else can I do for you? And the frontline workers who showed up to work, who kept us going, a note of thanks. We can't say it enough, but thank you for what you've done. It's been a difficult year, but seeing the courage that they've expressed, the work that's been done on our Farm Bill, the real impact, personal impact that came as a result of the work of Econsult and Team PA and the Farm Bill, I think puts us in a great position. So I'm looking forward to the report today to get an update on that impact. But again, thank you, Mark, and to the panelists, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Secretary Redding. Really appreciate your opening remarks and really for your leadership on this, because for those of you on this webinar, this report and especially the first report wouldn't have happened without the drive, push, and knowledge that Secretary Redding brought to the table and made sure that everyone on the team was pushing as well. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Econsult Solutions of Philadelphia. As with the previous report, they were hired to perform the analysis. It gives me great pleasure now to introduce Daniel Miles, Senior Vice President and Principal of Econsult, to go through the preview of this report. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Secretary Redding, and thank you, Chairman Pashinski. So the goal of our analysis here is there's three goals. One was to update the economic impact, update the state of agriculture in Pennsylvania based on the 2017 Ag Census, update the economic impact estimates to see how the economic contribution of the ag sector has changed, as well as to take a deep dive into 8 subsectors to understand what are the economic impacts that are generated by each of the key subsectors in Pennsylvania agriculture. And then we conducted focus groups to help understand the impact that the Farm Bill has had on agriculture in Pennsylvania, how those impacts differ by sector, and also how COVID-19 has impacted the sector and how quickly we think the sector will recover. Next slide, please. So agriculture, as many on this call know, that has a long history as a major contributor to Pennsylvania's economy. As of 2017, there's approximately 53,000 farms across the state, and nearly 7.3 million acres of land were devoted to agriculture. Over the 2012 to 2017 period, the number of farms decreased by 10%, and the number of acres is down by 5%. And we are currently ranked 14th in terms of the number of farms nationally. However, in terms of acres of farmland, we rank 35th, and in terms of the average farm size, we are ranked 45th. So our farms tend to be much smaller than most of the farms across the country. And nearly 90% of the farms in Pennsylvania are family owned or individually owned. And that's likely contributing to the distribution that you see in the graph here. But on the bright side, in terms of the number of the total sales, the total agricultural sales in Pennsylvania is up 5% over the 2012 to 2017 period. So while our number of farms are down, the farms that are remaining are becoming more productive. And there's an interesting size dynamic in Pennsylvania. If you look at the graph, more than 50% of our farms, around 27,000, are classified as small. So they have less than $10,000 worth of sales. And only 6% are classified as mega, having more than $500,000 of sales. However, if we look at the revenue generated by these farms, the small farms, which comprise half the farms in Pennsylvania, only are generating 1% of the sales. And while the mega farms are responsible for more than 2/3 of the sales, so almost $5.2 billion ag output is being generated by less than 3,100 farms. So there's an interesting size dynamic that I think contributes to a lot of the data that we'll see in terms of the economic impacts. Next slide, please. So as I said, we're ranked 14th in terms of number of farms nationally, 35th in terms of average farm size, and 45th in terms of average farm size. But we rank in the Commonwealth ranks in the top 10 in production in a number of areas. We're number 1 in the country in mushrooms. Almost half of the mushrooms consumed in this country are produced in Pennsylvania, most of them in Chester County. We're ranked number 6 in milk sales, and milk contributes about 40% of the total output of the animal production sector in Pennsylvania. But in 2012, we were ranked 5th, so we lost a little bit of ground in terms of milk and dairy. We're ranked number 3 in horticulture. We're ranked number 8th in poultry. We're generating almost 1.7 billion of ag output, and that sector is growing at a tremendous rate, growing 24% over the 2012 to 2017 period. We're ranked number 7 in maple syrup, and that maple syrup has seen a tremendous growth over the 2012 to 2017 period, growing 80%, but it is growing from a very small base. So it's only $5.4 million of ag revenue, but it is growing quickly. And then hog sales in Pennsylvania generates almost $600 million of sales. We're ranked 13th nationally, and it's growing at a tremendous rate, growing at almost 25% over the 2012 to 2017 period. So we are seeing some good growth in some of the sectors that comprise a big chunk of Pennsylvania agriculture, whether that's poultry or hog sales. Next slide. And as part of this, with the help of Team PA, we distributed a survey to around 50 agricultural industry members to help assess kind of what is the current state of agriculture, to get a little bit more updated kind of data than the available from the farm census. And what we found was that more than 60% of people who are involved in agriculture in Pennsylvania feel that the sector is moderately strong or very strong. And most importantly, nobody thought that the sector was weak. Now, while the majority of respondents thought that the sector was strong, there are a number of factors that they feel are impacting the success of agriculture and maybe holding agriculture back. This includes labor, in terms of both labor supply as well as labor quality. Not surprisingly, commodity prices. And then lack of local processing was also cited as a major concern, holding back the success of agriculture. Next slide, please. And then we also asked survey respondents how effective various components of the Farm Bill have been. More than 60% found the business development and succession planning resources to be somewhat or very effective. And I think that's very important, given the fact that 90% of the farms in Pennsylvania are individually or family owned. Succession planning is very important for them to be able to continue on the legacy of agriculture. More than 50% found the programs around ag protections, new market opportunities, including organics, and regulations to be very effective. And that's good, because I think that the organics, given the higher margin provided by organics, could help alleviate some of the concerns that people cited around commodity prices. And then more than 40% found the programs around increased processing capabilities and beginning stronger building a stronger ag workforce as being effective. However, given the fact that a large number of people cited both workforce and lack of processing as factors holding back the sector, there may be a little bit more work that needs to be done there, or maybe given the fact that the ag bill hasn't been passed all that long ago, there just may need to be a little bit more time for some of these programs to become effective in terms of increasing processing capabilities as well as building a stronger agricultural workforce. And now Becky DeJoseph, Director at Econsult Solutions, will walk through the economic impact analysis that we've done.
Thank you, Daniel. So before we get started on the actual impacts, it's important to first define how we define Pennsylvania's agricultural industries. And we define it as those industries involved in the production and processing of crops, the production and processing of animals, the production and processing of forestry products, landscaping and horticultural services, agricultural-related support services, and food manufacturing. In 2000, it was estimated that Pennsylvania's agricultural industry had a direct output of roughly $81.5 billion. However, looking at this direct impact does not tell the full story of what agriculture means to the Commonwealth's economy. Spillover effects are generated through inter-industry linkages between the agricultural sectors, which we have our direct output, and other sectors of the economy. These impacts, combined with the direct impacts, provide a much more comprehensive picture of how Pennsylvania's agricultural industry contributes to and drives the state economy. So, for example, a dairy farm contributes directly to the local economy by selling farm products, in particular, in this case, milk, employing individuals directly working on the farm, and paying those individuals wages and salaries. The farmer buys feed from feed suppliers and other farmers, fertilizer and seed, vet services, trucking services to haul the milk, electric and other utilities, insurance, professional services including accountants and lawyers, and farm equipment and maintenance repair. Now, some of these purchases are from other businesses within the ag sector and are therefore already captured in that $81.5 billion direct impact of the ag sector. However, the purchases from businesses outside of the sector, such as trucking services, utilities, and professional services, generate additional economic impacts outside of the ag sector. These impacts are captured in what we call the indirect impacts. Secondly, the salaries paid to employees working on the farm, as well as the farmers themselves, generate additional spillover economic impact. They spend their wages in the local economy, and these are considered what we call induced impacts. Together, these indirect and induced impacts generate an additional $51 billion in output to the Commonwealth's economy. Together with the direct output, these effects result in $132.5 billion economic impact. These activities directly support jobs as well. An estimate of roughly 300,000 jobs are directly supported in one of the 9 areas that make up the agricultural industry. However, in the same way that the direct output does not tell the entire story of agricultural's influence, direct employment does not capture the entirety of the industry support. There are an additional 292,000 jobs supported as a result of industry and employee spending. Now, in order to assess the impacts of individual subsectors within the ag industry, we did a deep dive analysis on individual products and commodities produced in the Commonwealth. With the exception of food and beverage manufacturing, these subsectors analyze the economic impact of each commodity as it moves throughout the production process. We analyzed 4 commodities within the animal production sector, which are listed on the top: dairy, poultry, beef, and other animals. And we analyzed 3 industries within the crop production sector: fruit and vegetables, forestry, and nursery and landscaping. And lastly, all food and beverage manufacturing are included in the manufacturing subsector. It is important to note that these subsectors are not additive in that many of the sectors have at least some overlap. However, adjustments have been made to the modeling to ensure that no double counting occurs within each subsector. So our first subsector is poultry. And poultry is our second smallest animal production group, and it includes 3 primary industries: chicken and egg production, which includes chicken egg production, broilers and meat-type chicken production, turkey production, and poultry hatcheries, as well as poultry processing and animal feed for poultry. Together, these industries produce a direct output of $4.3 billion and an indirect and induced impact of $2.8 billion for a total impact of $7.1 billion, supporting a total of 27,000 jobs. Beef is our second largest animal production group, and it includes 4 industries: beef, cattle, ranching, and farming, which includes cattle backgrounding, calf production, dairy heifer replacement production, feeder and stocker calf production and cattle feedlots, as well as beef animal slaughtering, meat processed from carcasses, and animal feed for beef. Together, these industries produce a direct output of $6.1 billion and an indirect and induced impact of $3 billion for a total impact of $9.1 billion, supporting roughly 39,000 jobs. The other animals subsector includes primarily pork, sheep, goat, and equine production, among others. Pork is by far the largest animal included in this grouping, with 83% of total direct output. Also included in this subsector is animal slaughtering, processing, and animal feed production for these animals in particular. This subsector is the smallest of the animal production subsectors, with a direct output of $2.7 billion, an indirect and induced impact of $1.5 billion, for a total impact of $4.3 billion, supporting roughly 20,000 jobs. Dairy is the last and largest subsector within the animal production group and includes dairy, cattle, and milk production, fluid milk, dry, condensed, and evaporated milk, cheese, butter, and ice cream manufacturing as well, which together produce a direct output of $8.3 billion, which is the largest of the animal production groups, and an indirect and induced impact of $5.8 billion, for a total output of roughly $14.1 billion, supporting 53,000 jobs. Now, within our crop-based sectors, fruits and vegetables grown and processed in Pennsylvania include tree nut farming, fruit farming, vegetable and melon farming, and the largest crop in the subsector, mushrooms and food grown under glass. In total, this subsector produces $3.5 billion in direct output and indirect and induced output of $2.6 billion, for a total economic impact of $6.1 billion, supporting 31,600 jobs. Our next subsector is food and beverage manufacturing, which is the largest subsector out of the eight with $22.4 billion in direct output, and includes manufacturing across 20 various industries within Pennsylvania, including tobacco, wineries, breweries, spices, snack food, coffee, and pasta manufacturing, among others. When including the indirect and induced impacts, this sector has a total output of $38.3 billion in economic input and supports roughly 140,000 jobs. Forestry production and manufacturing is the second largest of the 8 subsectors analyzed. However, 97% of the $2.8 billion in direct output is within the forestry processing sector, and included in this sector are industries such as paperboard container manufacturing, sanitary paper manufacturing, paper mills, and sawmills, among others. 3% of this subsector is involved in forestry production within the state, and the majority of activity occurred in forestry production is commercial logging. In addition to the direct impacts, this subsector has an indirect and induced output of $17.3 billion, for a total output of $39.1 billion, supporting 168 total jobs. The last subsector analyzed is nursery and landscaping, and included in this subsector is non-mushroom nursery and horticulture, as well as landscaping and horticultural services. Together, these 2 industries have a direct output of $4.1 billion with an indirect and induced output of $3.3 billion, for a total economic impact of $7.5 billion, supporting approximately 85,000 jobs. And now I will turn, now that we've talked about a little bit about the economic impacts and the subsectors, I will turn the presentation over to Steve Ray, and he will talk about COVID, recovery, and beyond.
Thanks, Becky. This information we gathered through interviews and focus groups and surveys of stakeholders across Pennsylvania, and we'll have a chance to understand a little bit about what has been the impact of COVID, what are we expecting in terms of recovery, and then what is the long-term future for agriculture in Pennsylvania, and what could be done to help support this industry. First, we asked folks, what has been the impact of COVID on the industry? And as would be expected, about 63% of Pennsylvania of the stakeholders felt that the impact had been very negative or somewhat negative. Another 19% neutral. So 80% saying that we were neutral to a very negative impact of COVID on the industry. And what they're expecting is that this is a short to medium term impact, with most feeling that the impacts will be felt over 1 to 2 years or less than 1 year. As we look at what those disruptions have been, in particular, the disruption in the market distribution channels, the supply chain, but also the impact on things like loss of the restaurant and institutional business make up really a big part of those impacts. In addition, the impact on the labor, on the workforce, both lack of needed labor, but also some of the issues that run into in terms of safety. In terms of what has helped the most in supporting agriculture in PA during the crisis, we see the impact of some of the government support programs, the Paycheck Protection Program, state or local government grant programs, economic injury disaster loans, SBA loan forgiveness, and even the coronavirus federal assistance program. So that direct cash support has been instrumental in keeping the industry afloat and being able to survive some of these negative impacts of the pandemic. When we looked at this, we also asked, were there places where we realized some positives, whether that was the existing strengths or new opportunities that were realized? And a lot of those really focused on the direct-to-consumer market, whether that be shifts to the grocery store, to prepared meals, to farmer markets. It also increased recognition of the fresh food and organic value, with, importantly, people willing to spend more. And as we look at that, the opportunities in organic to increase margins for farmers by moving to organic products could be one of the things that we really realize out of the COVID crisis and can take advantage as we go further. Other positive impacts that we saw or that we heard about, the recovery of the garden centers and landscaping who were impacted negatively early on during some of the closures. But as more people sat at home and looked around at the condition of their yards or the landscaping around their homes, have made significant investments. When we look at some of the negatives or the challenges, as we mentioned earlier, the food service and restaurant industry declines have had a major impact. These are primary customers for Pennsylvania farms. The workforce challenges and safety in terms of the ability to attract and retain employees. And then some of the concerns about small farmers with difficulty accessing the public support due to lack of connections. And then finally, the supply chain challenges. Disruption in the supply chain has a significant impact on the agricultural community in Pennsylvania. When we look at where can we go in terms of recovery, as we all look forward, some of the strengths or opportunities is building the ongoing systems and infrastructure to support this shift to direct-to-consumer sales. How do we keep that going? How do we take advantage of long-term shifts in buying habits? As we mentioned before, the organic side could be a real big opportunity, and the Farm Bill really put an emphasis on that organic side. Continue to capitalize on the pent-up demand for landscaping and gardening. And then also, as the recovery happens, are we ready for the surge in demand? Are we ready for that opportunity? On the weaknesses and the threats side, one concern is that the food service and restaurant industry decline is long-term or permanent. We're going to need supports in that industry. Supports in those industries will help support the agricultural industry. On the workforce side, the supply, will we be able to get people back into the workforce? Concerns about some of the immigration limits that came about partly because of safety, and then the long-term safety issues that will be required. And then that long-term sustainability after government funding ends. Government funding will end at a certain point. how long will it take for people to rebuild their cash flow and their other opportunities? So as we look at the recovery, what are going to be some of the public priorities? First and foremost is continued emphasis on making sure that the vaccine is available and is working through those essential industries, and the availability of PPE to allow our agricultural industries to continue working through this recovery period. We'll continue to need support for the labor supply chain assistance, and access to capital and entrepreneurship assistance, helping folks understand what they can do and how they can recover. Emerging issue, broadband access. The new communication methods, the new supply chain require good internet connections for our family farms and production centers. So that's going to be an important piece across the state. And then as we saw some of the challenges with the connections, how do we provide help navigating the programs that are going to be available, even navigating farm bill programs in Pennsylvania? How are we making sure that people have those connections? As we look beyond COVID into the long-term future, folks were optimistic about a few opportunities. They see new trade and immigration policies having a potential long-term benefit. We see real opportunities in growing apprenticeship programs to create the workforce of the future in the agricultural industry. Adoption of resilient and conservation practices to offset one of the threats on climate change, heat and extreme weather patterns, and even some of the water access, availability and quality issues. Other opportunities in urban agriculture. One of the things that the pandemic has shown was more interest in the cities in agriculture. What are some of those opportunities? The growth on the medical marijuana and the hemp industries, and then opportunities in creating more awareness of the state and federal programs. As people have come more into contact with those during the crisis, the opportunity to build that out into the future. Other threats that we saw or that we've heard about, the loss of small farms, as Daniel mentioned, we've seen a decline over time. Some of that's due to gentrification, land loss, or even succession planning issues. Some of the issues from the Farm Bill that address that could be very important. Commodity pricing, and in particular, one raised was as things are becoming more automated, the technology costs rising. How do we help our farmers and our producers deal with that? And then we do have some issues that are systemic in industries like hardwoods, in terms of workforce, in terms of production, and in terms of supply chain. As we look at that and link that to agriculture policy going forward, couple of things that really stood out. One, workforce development must be a priority. That includes things like apprenticeships. It also includes immigration policy and making sure that we have the workers needed to continue our production. Strengthening and supporting our organic promotion and enforcement issues. Again, the opportunity in organic should be seized and taken advantage of. That will help with margins as we go forward. Expanding those urban agriculture programs and opportunities, more research and better understanding of the supply chain issues that were raised during COVID, and how do we continue to deal with those going forward. Support, again, on the rural internet and broadband access. I would hope that there's some federal action going on that. This isn't an issue alone to Pennsylvania, but it's clearly important for Pennsylvania farmers and producers across the state. A couple things that have happened during the COVID was folks learning and accessing more of the online programs and availability from Penn State Extension. We think that's an opportunity to grow and take that forward. And then finally, as competition is rising, we're going to need to stay competitive and aggressive in the hemp and the marijuana industries as they grow and as they change in the future. With that, we want to thank you and thank the department and the secretary and Team PA for giving us the opportunity to work on this. This is a preview. We'll be finalizing the report and it will be coming out in the coming month. But we're really ready to answer some questions. And I guess, Mark, I'm turning it back over to you.
Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you for that thorough reading of the report and briefing everyone on how things are going in agriculture. And I'd like to thank you, Becky and Daniel, for your efforts and for the briefing. As we move into the next section of our webinar, the Q&A, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Representative Eddie Day Pashinski, who Eddie Day was elected in 2006. He represents the 121st District in Luzerne County. And for those of you on the call, why he's important to this call is that he and his staff are a champion of agriculture. They're always there when we need them. They're always willing to listen and fight for the things that we need. And he was there every day at the beginning of the Farm Bill discussion. He's the Democratic chair of the Ag and Rural Committee in the House of Representatives. He's also on the Fair Committee, and he's also co-chair of the Committee. So when it comes to outdoors, Eddie Day is there. He's also a champion of our veterans, the health and welfare of our citizens, and he's also on the Grandparents Caucus, which I think shows that he's looking out for the children of our state. So for the representative to give some remarks as we move into this next section, sir, Mr. Chairman, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. You're very kind. I appreciate those kind words that you led into. And I cannot tell you how grateful I am for all the great work that has just transpired. And that information that has been gathered so carefully and skillfully is going to help guide Secretary Redding, Governor Wolf, and of course all of us on the Ag Committee as we go forward. I want to emphasize the relationship that we have that Mark, you touched on. The ultimate respect for Secretary Redding, who is someone who comes from the ag industry, knows the ag industry inside and out. There is a tremendous amount of collaboration on issues relative to our ag community. I'm new to this. 17, 18 is when I first became the ag chair. I'm a city guy. So it was a whole new learning process for me. And I cannot tell you how exciting it was and still is. And what I feel I saw and learned was something that I want to share. And that was, here's a guy that's coming in to the ag business without any idea other than the fact that I go to the grocery store and I buy stuff and I eat stuff. And it's good. And then I'm listening to all the various discussions that we've had, and we're talking about PA Preferred. And by the way, I think you can see my PA Preferred sign right behind me there, and my PA Preferred hat. And the first thought I had was, you know what? Pennsylvania is absolutely gifted with incredible land and water, and the food products that we produce are outstanding. Let's promote them. PA Preferred. Let's promote the PA Preferred symbol, which means quality products here in Pennsylvania. Your study has emphasized all the quality that we have here in Pennsylvania. We have to now educate our Pennsylvanians, let alone the world. Back in 2018, when your first study came out, the two numbers that I used was $135 billion that the ag industry brings to our economy, and then the 80,000 jobs. So ag is absolutely critical in our economic structure, the survival of Pennsylvania. It's an honor for me to serve, and I truly look forward to now taking your new information and with the guidance of Secretary Redding and working with my colleagues. Marty Causer, the former Republican chair, was wonderful. Carrie, her executive director, super, and my executive director, Destiny. It's like a family. We work together for the betterment of the farm community, and I look forward to continue that same kind of process, attitude, and hopefully we can continue on the good results from the Farm Bill, the first one ever. That's historic. Thank you, Mark. I think I've taken enough of time, but it's coming from the heart, buddy. I appreciate all the good work you guys do.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And really, we appreciate what you do, too. And I mean, like you said, coming into this in 2017, you really grabbed it by the horns and worked with us to make sure that the first ever state farm bill was passed, and we're doing what we can, and probably is more critical through this COVID that we've had these programs in place. So thank you very much. So for those of you who don't know, my name's Mark Critz. I'm the Executive Director of the Rural Development Council here at the Department of Agriculture. And as of 2019, I'm also the Western Regional Director for the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. I am your moderator, and I'm here to help field questions, answer questions, along with our panelists, which are obviously Secretary Redding, Chairman Eddie Day Pashinski, Steve Ray and his team, Daniel and Becky. And then one mention that I didn't make earlier is that much of this work, or all of this work, has been through our partnership with Team PA. And without them, a lot of this probably wouldn't have been as easy to do. And because of them, there is now an advisory council within Team PA that is strictly focused on agriculture, which is a big win for agriculture, because it brings a lot of the business folks together to strategize on how best to move agriculture forward. So I will look to my chat box. Again, I will remind folks that if you have any questions or comments, put them in the comments section, and they will be shipped over to me, and then I can ask the panelists the questions that you have. So one thing that I would ask the panelists, and I'll start with you, Secretary Redding, as you looked at the most recent report, and not with COVID in mind. I mean, we've seen some downturns in different places. Are there sections of the report that show that, you know, that what we did in the Farm Bill has been working, and I guess to take a little bit further, sections where you think we need to be doing more because you see some trends that you don't like?
Yeah, Mark, thanks. And again, thanks to the panel. And I look forward to hearing from Ryan and his perspective from Team PA as well. But I'll say two things. One, I think you're generally the updated study is sort of confirmation of significance of agriculture. As I've mentioned many times, you know, prior to the initial study, we had no baseline, right? We really didn't have a good sense of, you know, the definition that I mentioned in the introduction, and that always sounds like an odd question to ask, right? What is agriculture? Well, I think what Becky has laid out and today is sort of, you know, the reveal of what is inside that word of agriculture. It's a big word, right? And it means a lot of different things to different people. So I think having that definition revealed, that the subsets that were discussed today, I think all speak to what we were trying to capture in the original Farm Bill, to be comprehensive, to be inclusive, to be zip code neutral. So that's one part. The second is to what Steve had shared in the very last slide, looking at those policy considerations going forward. And I just take away from this and keep underscoring the word workforce, right? Because there's a lot of things that are happening, but that workforce issue shows up both in, you know, the quality noted, but also just the access. So I think that for me is listed appropriately in the policy recommendations of workforce, looking at apprenticeships and immigration, and just being sensitive to the upside of what has come out of this COVID. I mean, well, it's been painful, but I think we've learned a lot. So I take away those key pieces for me. So yeah, but Ryan, I mean, I know you've looked at this and worked with it, and just from the Team PA perspective, thoughts on the study and Team PA's role here?
Yeah, thanks, Secretary. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Representative, and the team at Econsult. Yeah, my name is Ryan Unger. I'm the President and CEO, Team Pennsylvania, which is the state's public-private partnership for economic development. And you know, as I sort of reflect upon what we just heard, what kind of comes to mind is what you were alluding to right there, Secretary. Team Pennsylvania, we work, you know, across the spectrum with all industries. We have a special partnership, undoubtedly, with the Department of Agriculture in terms of resources and human capital, and our other capital that we lay out to support the partnership with a full-time ag policy program manager, Kelly Kondratik, who's led a lot, if not all of this work for us. But I'm also thinking about how similar are the challenges the ag industry faces that our other industries are facing as well. You know, we get a chance to do work in the energy field, in a significant amount of work, and across meeting with site consultants and site selectors from across the country and the globe. And every conversation and dialogue begins with talent and how we can best maximize the assets and talent that we have here in the Commonwealth. And no company is going to come here or grow here without a highly trained workforce. So I know one of the things we continue to take away from this, now that we both have survey evidence and data evidence that there are challenges, is how do we translate to policy action? Because whenever we do work like this, it's important and critical for us to not just do a report, but to do a report and a roadmap. That's why we really appreciated the opportunity last time to put together the economic impact plan, but also to put it to action in the Pennsylvania Farm Bill, right? Like, it's one thing to have the numbers and have the information, and we want to go on the road and talk about it, but it needs to lead to action. And I think it's certainly in the early stages of gauging the success. We always want to gauge success in a lot of these policy actions in short increments, 1 year, 2 year, and certainly I think there's longer horizons. But I think we need to begin to understand what we've seen. We've obviously seen a little bit of retraction in some specific industries, and pay special attention there, whether they be external market forces or internal challenges, and begin to address them either by ourselves in our work in our ag team, but also the great ag community we have with partners stretching throughout the Commonwealth to try to make changes there as well.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Secretary, for those thoughtful answers, and really, describing what the challenges and what the future looks like and how we do better. For Chairman Pashinski, I would ask, what are, as you see them, PDA, the Ag Committee's priorities for the coming year?
Well, I think it's a reaction to what the pandemic has done. How do we recover from that? I think it's a matter of evaluating the Farm Bill and what has transpired from that. What are the results of the Farm Bill? And by the way, there's certain aspects of the Farm Bill that you're not going to really see anything for some time. When we talk about our education, trying to get kids to be involved in the farm industry and so on, this is a process that's going to take some time. What is most important, I think, is that we have an attitude, open door policy, which is, let's figure out what are our most important needs now in order to make it through the time period until that vaccine and the virus subsides. How is that going to affect the processing of our food under the conditions now? Once we're back to normal, it's a whole different ball game. So I, from my standpoint and my staff, we take the lead from Secretary Redding. We take the lead from Farm Bureau, from everyone that's in the fields, in the meatpacking plant. What do they need? What do we have to do to make sure that we continue to make sure we produce the highest quality food at the best cost, get it distributed to where we are? And right now, if we have ourselves together, and I believe we do, and the research is very important for us as we go forward, let's get active right now. Let's start planning right now. What do we need to do to make sure Pennsylvania is first out of the box as we continue to recover from this pandemic and we get into our normal growing season? So priority is to maintain the attitude, maintain the open door policy, and listen to our farmers and those that are involved in the industry, and then begin to, whether it's develop legislation, policy, whatever it takes, to help our ag business out. That's what I'm here for.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next question I would pose to the folks at Econsult and also to Secretary Redding is that as you look through this report, obviously there are opportunities, there are chances to grow some things, and I'd ask, looking forward, where is it that you feel we need to really focus to make sure that we're taking advantage of the opportunities that have arisen due to COVID and due to the changing environment over the last couple of years.
Thanks, Mark. I'll take this. This is Steve Ray from Econsult. I think I mentioned it during the presentation, but these opportunities on the direct-to-consumer marketplace are really interesting. Both the growth of the prepared food that has come around as a result of COVID, but also the organics, and both of those offer opportunities to increase margins, which can help our smaller farms and others. What that's going to take are the connections, the financing, and some of the entrepreneurial business skills. So how are we connecting those types of skills to what are small businesses in a lot of cases and make that go forward?
Yeah, thank you, Steve and Mark. I would say two things. One, I think everything here is predicated on a COVID recovery and a faster COVID recovery. I think that at the end of the day for me is what we're focused on. A lot of issues around agriculture and all important, supporting the governor and the team to get the COVID vaccine out there, pushed forward as quickly as we possibly can, because it gets us back to the confidence that we need in the marketplace. It gets the confidence into that food supply system and processors and so forth. So that's one. Two is I think the other key takeaway from this COVID is the telecommunications and the broadband, that connectedness. I look at the two bookends to this thing are the food and the
Yes.
we need to do, and the other one is technology, and they're not unrelated here, right? So I would take that away, and I was pleased to see that noted as one of the public priorities in recovery from the Econsult report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Really appreciate that, and Steve for your thoughtful answers. As we are coming to the end of our session, I'd like to give Secretary Redding, Chairman Pashinski, and the CEO of Team PA, Ryan Unger, an opportunity to offer closing remarks. Secretary?
Yeah, Mark, again, I'll end where I began with a simple thank you. I think the work that's been done, the early decisions we made some years ago to look critically but constructively at sort of where we were as an industry, what's the industry need. It speaks to that sort of action that we said earlier and the intentionality that Ryan has noted. And I'm just so grateful that, at the time, we found the right partnership with Team Pennsylvania. We leveraged that relationship that they have with other sectors. I would say that it both enriched us and enriched Team Pennsylvania to have that agriculture and food sector there. But importantly, to have solid data, to have good recommendations, very thoughtful from across the state, inform the policies, and then to build that really nice sort of bipartisan, bicameral relationship with the legislature to get this done. And when you look around the state, it was certainly important pre-COVID, but to have the results that we have from the first Farm Bill, and then to have that funded a second time in this most recent budget is both a statement of confidence in the work, but also the statement of need and the future that many see here, and that's all captured in this updated report. So I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the people who have made it happen and brought us to this point, both those on the screen and the many stakeholders who stood with us to get to this point. It speaks to our theme of cultivating tomorrow is one of action. So thank you for being part of it.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Chairman Pashinski?
Well, that's a tough act to follow. I think Secretary Redding did a fantastic job of summing this all up. I just want to emphasize the fact, I think it's all about the attitude. We have a good attitude. We have a relationship where we're just trying to do the right thing for the right reasons. Yes, we have COVID, which is a huge challenge, But as I often say to so many folks, our ancestors were also faced with many challenges, life-threatening challenges, and they have overcome them and made things better for us. The challenge today for us is to do the same thing. We're going to meet the challenge of this pandemic. We're going to defeat this pandemic, and we're going to get back to work. You have provided, I thank Econsult for the great information. As the secretary pointed out, we have quality information to work from to build upon a better ag system. And again, as long as we have that cooperation and attitude, that bipartisanship that we've enjoyed, we're going to continue to make progress here. And again, thank you all for the great work that you've done. I'm ready to get to work. I know the secretary is too. And the only thing I miss with that farm show is I can't be in that wagon race. And our milkshakes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, the last word is yours.
Oh, great. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Representative. Thanks, Secretary, and thanks to the team at Econsult. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Kelly Kondratik, our Manager of Ag Policy and Programs, for her hard work on this behind the scenes as well. First, I want to take a second to talk about what's next, because it's great to talk about numbers and data. But as I mentioned earlier, we don't just do reports, we want to do roadmaps as well. So we're going to be finalizing the final report over the next 30 to 45 days, produce a larger written document, and then begin talking about it and going out. It's a lot easier to do it through these types of mediums, whether it be Zoom or Facebook or different places, to reach audiences around the state, leveraging our Agricultural Advisory Board and other partners to try to get the word out of the lessons learned and the policy recommendations going forward. We're excited about that. And then we'll gladly hand it over to the representative and the governor's office and others to try to make some real action out of this as we go forward, and be happy and excited to see what those results are. And my last note would be appreciation as well for a chance on a personal level to engage in this work. My father grew up on a farm. A great-grandfather owned a dairy in my hometown of Sunbury. And very often throughout my career in economic development, I thought, well, how is this work translating back into some of that heritage? And it wasn't until I got a chance to sit down with Secretary Redding and his team early on in the days of the Wolf administration, as they expressed this desire to connect economic development with agricultural development, that this natural commodity is also an economic commodity, and how do we grow our Commonwealth and focus on this great asset. So we appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate it on a personal level, and certainly from the organization. Since our early days at Team Pennsylvania under Governor Ridge, one of our consistent core values has been to be nonpartisan. And I firmly believe that numbers are nonpartisan, and that we can build and forge partnerships, even in challenging times like this, by looking to what the data tells us, listening to the stories that we're told through the surveys, and work together in cultivating tomorrow with our partners at the Department of Agriculture and in the agricultural community. So again, thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you to all those who've joined us today. I think what you heard is that we all have an understanding that food touches everyone's life, and that we're working very diligently to make sure that agriculture plays the large role that it already does to sustain it and build it for the future of Pennsylvania. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you to all our panelists. Really appreciate the insight and your comments during this session, and the farm show, right, Secretary? Thank you, everyone.